perspective on, basically the issues of poverty, issues of attacks on poor and on welfare rights, and how that's related to Australia as like, a colonial society, and the special problems of Aboriginal disadvantage. So, Tanya, were you kind of happy to go first, or?
Hello everyone, please bear with me, this is my first time in public speaking, so I'd like to first pay my respects to the Kaurna elders and ancestors for letting us meet and speak on their country. Paz asked Jeanette and I to come and speak with you all today regarding Aboriginal issues and poverty and all the different issues that come into play when you talk about Aboriginal people. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the National Conference on Domestic Violence and Aboriginal Family Violence. I went more as a community member. When I first found out about the conference, they were charging $1,500 a ticket to attend a conference that in reality, the actual people who are affected would be able to afford to attend. And so I felt, were the pink elephants that were being discussed and weren't in the room. So that's why I wanted to go to the conference, and also because I was going through some personal stuff myself. And I wasn't aware of rights and the different services that are out there available. And unless you go searching and looking for them, they're not there. With Aboriginal domestic violence, I tend to think that this domestic violence is non-racist, and it's also not sexist. It happens to rich people and it happens to poor people. Unfortunately, because of the history that our people of this country have, we have 217 years of domestic violence that's been committed on our country, on our homelands. Part of the reason that Call to Action Adelaide, that Jeanette and I formed, came together as a concern, and we wanted an outlet that South Australian people could show their support for the communities around this country that the government at the time wanted to close, and are still talking about closing. Originally it was 254 communities, and then it went down to, I think, 142 communities. And the reason that the government was saying that they were going to close these communities down, as with a lot of Aboriginal organisations and programs that are started, they cut the funding. And the reason they cut the funding, they find all sorts of excuses. Child molesting, the communities aren't viable, that it's our choice, it's a lifestyle choice, when it blatantly is a land grab and a money grab for the big corporation and the government. I'll hand the mic over to Jeanette so she can have a little say.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeanette. I'm a Narungga person, and now my voice is going to change because I also am not used to public speaking. I more organise the events behind, and I get the speakers to talk. So today I'm sort of being pushed in the front, thanks Paz. I used to work at Sensory. Yes. I was an Aboriginal liaison officer, which now they call it Indigenous Customer Service Officer. So, customers, yes. I used to look after my customers, my Aboriginal customers. I used to look after them. But one of the things I did notice that I created my own job. I'll just let you know that. There wasn't a person working in Centrelink in the southern area when I first moved to Adelaide, and there was about over 1,000 people on Centrelink just in the Marion area alone. So every time I went in Centrelink, there was an issue of me trying to get my business done, and I said, well, where's your Aboriginal liaison? They culturally understand where I'm coming from. Sorry, we don't have one. Okay. So that wasn't good enough for me. So I went home, wrote up a petition, and every Aboriginal event that I went to in the southern area, I took my petition with me. So I got all my community gangs out to sign it. 4 years later, there's a position advertised in the advertiser for an Indigenous customer service officer. I look at it, that's my job, that's mine, I apply for it and I get the position. So I become the Indigenous Centrelink customer service officer. I loved working there, I loved helping the customers, I loved annoying job network people when they would breach my customers. I would ring them up and culturally tell them that they shouldn't be doing that and to lift the breach. I would also love annoying storekeepers on the APY lands and things like that that would use the book-up system. Now, has anyone heard of a book-up system? It's like credit. So you've all got credit cards and you pay them back. Well, the shopkeepers used to say you can get your food and we will take it out of your next pension. But all the checks used to go to the shop. So the shopkeeper would then take their money and give the people what was left after their account was paid. So I would have Aboriginal people coming from the lands down here because of medical reasons and they didn't have any money. So I would then proceed to cancel that cheque that was sitting up in the store and put it on an EBT card, which is similar to the basic card but nicer. So then they would be able to access their money down here and do whatever. They would then sort that issue out with the shopkeeper when they got back. But this is how if we need money now, we need it now. And we live day to day, so we will live pay to pay. So what we get, once we pay all our bills in our Centrelink payment, we try and make it stretch, but if we can't, then that's where family obligations come in. We will borrow from family members. So by the time the next pay comes, you're paying back all your family members and you're still left broke. But you know that you've got that cycle of family that will help you and support you. So while I was working at Centrelink, we heard talk as Aboriginal liaison officers that there was a new form of payment card coming in that they were going to call the basic card. And I sat there and I just shook my head. I'm like, here we go again. We're going back to tea and sugar and flour ration days that used to happen to our people. So I just said, no, I'm not going to work for an organisation that, takes that away from people, devalues their human rights and just makes them feel like, they're less human. So I decided to leave Centrelink unpaid and I went and worked with the state government in traineeships and apprenticeships. So I was putting young Aboriginal people into government traineeships for 12 months, which after working 18 months I sort of got a bit disheartened as well because there were no real jobs at the end of the 12 months for our trainees. Unless that department had said, yes, we have ASO 1 position, which you should apply for. But that was rare. It would only happen to our trainees if their supervisor or the person that was looking after them in their traineeship generally cared about them and generally wanted them to succeed. So a lot of my trainees, I call my trainees, I had 50 on my books. I probably had 10 out of that 50 that would go into ASO 1. The rest probably end up back on the dole or looking at other training. So I got a bit disheartened with the state government traineeship program. So then I decided, well, I'm not going back to Centrelink, so I'll just sit in the community, not be working for anyone, so then I don't have boxes that I'm restricted to and I can do and say what I like. And that's what I do now. So I go to Tanya and we organise rallies against what the government's doing. And yeah, I'm really passionate about what's happening in Aboriginal Aboriginal communities. I suppose being a stolen gem, wanting to know who I was, where I was, who my family was. I actually went back when I was 8. My biological mum found me. Now, the way I say found me is because around that time she came looking. I've linked it up to that was the time that people were allowed to, they lifted the restrictions on documents, and Mum was able to access her documents. So she was able to find out where all her 8 kids went. So I was the last one to come back. So yeah, it was like, you know, government did that to me. So I've always had a thing about, you know, the government as an individual, telling me who I am, whether I'm Aboriginal or Indigenous, telling me that I should live like a white person, but I can't because my skin is black, so it's very hard. Because people see me first as an Aboriginal dark-skinned person, even though, you know, I might be educated as a white person. So I still have that mentality of thinking, which is really good, I suppose, sometimes, because I can move between the two worlds really easy. Something a lot of Aboriginal people have struggled with. They either pick one side or the other. But I see it as it's something that I should use to benefit my Aboriginal community, because I know where the non-Aboriginal people are thinking and why they're thinking like that, because I have had that thinking installed in me till I was 8 years of age. So I suppose, you know, that to me also works in an advantage for me as an Aboriginal person. But yeah, I just get really annoyed because I've been involved with Aboriginal women's issues. I started as a young Aboriginal youth activist, so now I'm a young woman activist, still doing my activism. But I'm still talking about the same issues that my sister was talking about when I was little. So I'm still hearing, you know, we've got issues with education. Our kids are not reaching year 12. Well, the standard of our kids finishing year 12 now is changing, but that's only because of the support that's been seen that was lacking in school and has been put back in there. But a lot needs to go back to the education system. One of the things that I've been pushing, Aboriginal women as a whole have been pushing, is to have our Aboriginal history, true history, put in the curriculum. I think if people, non-Aboriginal people, have a sense of where we're coming from, what we have had to live with for the last, not just my generation, but my generation before and the generation before, is that things will close a little bit, but then the attention will get pushed and it'll turn somewhere else. So our stuff really doesn't get finished. So we've been talking about putting our Aboriginal stuff in the curriculum forever, which I think if we teach our young ones Aboriginal history, the true Aboriginal history, not cotton wool it or sugarcoat it, then people might actually realise as Aboriginal people where we are coming from. Now, the Adams Good saga, that was a great thing that just, it was a boiling pot. Like, as Aboriginal people know, we know that there is subtle racism here. We know that there's racism here. But for that to actually hit Twitter as mad as it did and Facebook as mad as it did, that just shows there is lots of work that needs to be done in Australia to build the gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. So if we get education within our teachers, that's another thing that we need to get. We need to get our teachers on board. We find teachers that, you know, if they have no cultural understanding of our kids will be or they would sit to the side. And I wasn't one of them, thank goodness, but my friends were. So when I went back to Port Augusta, I had my non-Aboriginal friends sitting this side, and I had my Aboriginal friends sitting this side. And my Aboriginal friends would always, ask the teacher this. So I would, whereas my non-Aboriginal friends, they didn't have a problem. But I always seemed to be that person that they would ask the question, because it was just something that, they didn't want to be seen as dumb, or didn't want to be seen. So it was quite happy to make Jeanette look dumb, or, and put their hand up, but I was happy to do that. So, it was like, I've always had that middle role to help. And I think I'm still doing it, but we need to have that education, we need to have our teachers educated. We're talking about, high death suicide rates in the Aboriginal community. Now, we have the highest youth rate of suicide in the world, and that is because of the Aboriginal suicide that we have. So we need to look at why our youth feel that their life is not worth living. A lot of my reason is it comes from the stolen gender stuff, and taking away culture and taking away families and splitting families up. For me, my healing as a stolen gen was finding my family, finding my culture, finding my identity, and which clan I fitted into, my stories, my dreams, my totems. A lot of these kids that are growing up today, they don't have that, or they can't find it. They've lost that link through their parents or their grandparents. So, to me, and I've been saying this at a lot of the juvenile justice stuff, don't put our kids incarcerate them in jails. You need to take them out bush, set up a bush camp that deals with culture, instills that culture back in them, that self-esteem, the love of culture, the love for country, but the love for themselves, because they don't have it. So this is what I do in my spare time. I attend women's gatherings, we come up with recommendations, we then take them to government and ask government to maybe look at the recommendations and maybe consider taking some on. But, we're still looking at recommendations from Black Deaths in Custody that was done how long ago and how many have been implemented. So, we can only keep them, be that little bleep on the radar and not go away and let them know. Because we're not, Aboriginal people, we're not going anywhere, I don't tell you. So, yeah, but, I think that if we do a few things that, as Aboriginal people, we just don't feel like this is our country. So, Miranda touched on that the other day with Carl Stefanovic about, I think it was The Verdict, the new show, Carl Stefanovic, and he had a Miranda tap as well. She's the young girl that's in The Sapphires, and she sings, yeah. Now he asked her about, do you identify as Australian? And she answered no. Now, to me, as an Aboriginal person, not a shock, not a horror, Tanya? Probably not a shock, horror, because we don't identify as Aboriginal people. If you heard me in my introduction, Jeanette Miller, Ghana, Arab, Naranga. That is who I am. Those are my Aboriginal groups, and that's where I belong. So, if you ask us if we're Australian, we will say no, because we're not Australian, we are these people, and that is who makes up. So, I think one of the things that we, as Aboriginal people, and my other friend was talking about this the other day, non-Aboriginal, is that I will attend Australia Day activities, but I will wear a shirt that says Survival Day. And I will have my whole family wearing shirts that say Survival Day. Because this is a day that we have survived. We have survived the massacres, we have survived the colonisation, survived assimilation. We have survived. So for us as Aboriginal people, that is not a day that we want to celebrate. We don't want to celebrate rape, we don't want to celebrate colonisation, we don't want to celebrate massacres. So this is what we're trying to say to the wider Australians. Australia Day is not our day, it's your day. It's the day you invaded us. So if you want us to be part of you, you need to meet us halfway and change that bloody day. So I won't talk too much. See, I'm on a roll. But yeah, the first time that Paz did get me to talk about basic card was because he knew I was an excellent link worker. He knew how much I hated the basic card. And he knew that I was just dead against it. So I did agree to come and talk to him. But one of the things I did say to Paz was, I just find it really funny that this basic card has been running up in the Northern Territory in our Aboriginal community for 5 years, maybe 7 years, and then all of a sudden it hits the mainstream. Oh my gosh, let's all jump up and cry and stand our feet and say, no, government, you can't do that. Well, where were you guys 7 years ago when it first started in Northern Territory with our Aboriginal people up there? One good show I would like you all to go away and have a look up on Google or YouTube is John Pilger's Utopia. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it, because John, he's one of the filmmakers that actually can walk in our shoes and look at things from our perspective. So I suggest that you go home and have a look at it. And yeah, it's like, you know, if we were more of a society, more of a collective society, I suppose, when the Northern Territory Intervention and the basic card come up there, we could have, you know, and we all jumped on it then, maybe we wouldn't be here today.
Thanks, Jeanette. Well, I can't compete with that. I'm going to talk a bit about DV today. And a lot of you, hopefully there's no triggers for anyone here. I've shared an article. When I went to the Domestic Violence Conference on the 15th and 16th of last month, they had Andrew O'Keefe emceed the first day, and then Michelle Lovegrove compared on the second day, and she's an Aboriginal reporter from Living Black and NITV. And she opened up her speech, as I'm going to today follow her lead, because it left me with such an unbelievable impression. This story is about a young girl, Colleen Tay Ford, from Western Australia. She was 18 years old when she died. She was brutally bashed, and God knows what else, by an 18-year-old boyfriend that was on ice. But nobody remembers her, nobody remembers reading about her, nobody remembers this case. The coroner's report, she had 180 wounds inflicted upon her body by this one individual in an ice rage. The reason I'm talking about DV is because it's quite prevalent in low-income and poverty families and people in situations like that. And I can't believe that a week before the conference was when this young girl up in Queensland was rammed in the back of her four-wheel drive by her boyfriend, and then he proceeded to get out of the car and bash her with the fire hydrant, which she died. Why I'm bringing it up is because that was all over the news. Rosie Batty's son was killed, that was all over the news. Whenever it comes to an Indigenous issues, Indigenous struggle, we are neglected. We do not feature on any, we're lucky if we get a look, you know. We had the biggest rally in Adelaide. Over 5,000 people attended the SOS Black Australia rally, and we were lucky if we got Channel 7 coverage. So that's why I'm bringing up DV at today's conference. It's not an issue that affects only Aboriginal people. Like I said earlier, it affects everybody. In fact, DV is one of the main causes for women and children who are becoming homeless. And in a lot of these cases, 50% of the women go back to their partners, which is pretty staggering. And that to me tells me, especially after attending the conference, that the services and procedures and processes that are put in place, whether it by South Australian Police and other related organisations, are not working. I say they're not working because when I attended that conference, I myself was going through a domestic violence situation, and I went to the Manning police station where the young mother was all over the news, disappeared, and then she was murdered by a partner. Well, that same police station refused to take my DV report. This is after the South Australian Commissioner for Police at the conference stated that after the, sorry, I've got notes here, the Zahara Foundation, if anyone's familiar, they're a foundation that was formed after a young Middle Eastern family. The mother was murdered at a family wedding. The father had came, yep, okay. And that's why that family started their foundation to help women become financially, because if you, as you're aware, I'm sure, there are a lot of different reasons behind DV, and one of the most untalked about parts of domestic violence is financial control. You know, and that's where the power imbalance and when DV occurs. In Aboriginal families, with this basic card and this new bank card that they want to give, cashless card, in Aboriginal communities and family systems, a lot of the times when you have an addiction problem in a family, as in say your husband or your partner is an alcoholic or an ice head or a gambler or whatever his downfall is, a lot of the times they will put pressure onto the woman to hand over their money. So you think in a situation like that, what a great idea that is. Well, that'll take away that DV edge off there because she doesn't have cash. But can you imagine how relentless the bashings will become when the woman says, I can't get money out? She's going to get flogged anyway. So this cashless card, and depending upon the community is, and who are the members that make up this community, and how dysfunctional some communities can be, it's quite a unique and individual decision to decide which communities or which individuals will be getting a basic card or a cashless card. How do you discern who deserves or who should have and who shouldn't? My father lives in Tennant Creek. I went up there a month ago to visit him, and I'll tell you what, it was an education for me, even as an Aboriginal woman. This community needs a basic card. The dysfunctionality of this isolated and remote community is heartbreaking to see. Young children that should be in school are not in school. They're playing dare with road trains. Instead of being in school, they're on the main road going through the middle of Tennant Creek. And the only time that you see people is when they're out hanging in the street. And usually that's when payday is. So I don't agree with the basics card. I don't agree with the cashless card because that takes away self-esteem. It takes away control. And that is the fundamentals of domestic violence. This government, in my eyes, is committing domestic violence on their own citizens. Whether you're Aboriginal, whether you're a refugee, or whether you're an elderly retired person. There is no individual scrutinising of individuals. You know, I have a heart problem. I have anxiety and depression, as I'm sure all of us, we all have issues. I'm not getting any younger. I find myself waking up very resentful to the fact that I have to report at 51 to a job network provider. And half of the girls, when I talk to them, are old enough to be my daughter and telling me that they're cutting me off because I didn't attend an interview. And at the same time, they were bullying. This week I had the Minister for Employment call me and asked if I would talk with her for a while she did a survey. And she asked me about the Job Network company, and I told her, you really don't want to know. And I told her how disgusted I was, that I find Job Network and work for the dole to be degrading. And the organisations that conduct these Job Network companies are just headhunters. You know, they don't provide any training. They don't even help you complete a reference or a resume. You know, general things that you need to go and get a job. They're not even doing that. They're not informing individuals of their rights when you walk into that first interview. What your rights are as a 50-year-old woman versus your rights as a 20-year-old or an elderly person. Your rights as a job network, with a job network provider, what their rights are and what they're supposed to do for you. So the last thing I wanted to leave with you all is that I found a really good book, and I think it would be a really good read for all of you people to read. It's called Decolonising Solidarity, and it's by Claire Land. And this book's about the dilemmas and the directions that integrates the often fraught endeavours of activism from colonial backgrounds seeking to be supportive of Indigenous struggles. So for white fellas out there, if you're interested and eager to learn how to support the Indigenous struggle, because the way I see it, if you people don't support Indigenous people, what happens to us will eventually happen to you. As Janet just shared with you all before, 7 years ago, basic cards were introduced. Northern Territory, kids being taken away, stolen generation, massacres. You know, it's happened to our people over the last 217 years. It's been proven that it takes over 300 years to change a human's thought patterns. What's his name? What was that guy's name? Yeah. Sorry, just bear with me for a minute. It's a cool story I thought I'd share. Lynch. There was a man who lived in the Caribbean, and his name was Lynch. And what the black slave masters in the South did was they paid this man to come over to their plantations and teach them his secret of how to hold and enslave humans in bondage. And he proved that it was a cycle of 300 years. It took 300 years to change the thought processes and the minds of whoever human that you wanted to control. And therefore, which would mean it would take another 300 years, I would assume, to deprogram you from. So I see what's been happening with the Indigenous people in this country since colonisation came. This same process is going to be, and is currently in play for everybody in this country. So all I can say and leave you with is, please support Indigenous issues and the struggles wherever you are in this country, because we need each other.
Thank you so much, Jeanette and Tanya. I think that was a great place to end it as well. I think, you know, the lesson from the intervention to the expansion of income quarantining is a very pertinent one. We've got a bit of time for questions. So throw it open to the floor.
In my experience in the current work that I do, I find what's really, containing and what's schizophrenic is a lot of intergenerational healing that needs to be done with Indigenous people, in particular that of the stolen generation. And, I guess it's up to people
that got a response?
Yeah, you're spot on there. And the way I see it is, you know, people from around the world are looking at Australia, especially after SOS Black Australia has brought Indigenous issues to the forefront globally. Yeah, and it's through the education and the sharing. Like Jeanette said earlier, we need to put in the school systems the true history of this country. That's the first thing. And from there, then we can start the healing. But until you acknowledge the past, how are you supposed to move on to the future? And then how many wrongs can you do to a person? You know, when you say sorry to somebody, sorry involves 3 steps. It's acknowledging that you've caused hurt or harm. How can I fix this? And how can we move forward together? So far, this government's only done one part of that, but has in my eyes, wiped away all the good the little that they've done by continuously putting more demands upon the Indigenous people, as in basics cards, closing communities, you know, because they're finding the riches. You know, 1936, they had the Pilbara strike, which is on my mother's country, and I always refer back to it because in those days, that's when the pastoralists wanted our lands for farming. And when they went up to the Pilbara and proceeded to go north, that's when they either massacred, poisoned water holes, or moved blackfellas into communities that they told us where our parents had to live. And so our people were pushed around. And it's still being done today. Now because they find that there's uranium and there's gold and there's other riches in the earth, where these people now live on these communities that they were put on, we'll move them and we'll put them over there. They're still taking children away, you know. We're having another generation. Well, it's never stopped, the taking of stolen generation. I'm a stolen generation member. My mother's a stolen generation member. I didn't have a happy reunion with family like Jeanette, but you know, that's reality of life. So I get involved with Aboriginal, through via activism and making people aware and hopefully sharing what is happening to our communities.
But I just want to go back to what you said. The dysfunctional is carried on, and it is from that stolen gen. One of the things I used to say, because my friend, she was a teacher, or she's still a teacher, she used to ask me to come in and do stolen gen talk. And it was interesting because I'd come in the class and I'd stand with her, and the kids were, you know, year 11, year 10 students, and they'd be standing there looking and still talking. And then Michelle would go, okay, we're ready to start now. And then they'd look at me, and then they'd look at the door like they were waiting for an older person to walk through. And Michelle would say, I'd like to introduce you to Jeanette, who is a stolen generation member. Well, the kids' eyes would sort of go, because they didn't realise it wasn't that long ago. I was born under that policy. So the stuff that I would talk to the kids in the class is about the dysfunctional stuff. So they would ask me, well, why your mob can't, you know, save your money? Why you got to spend it on grog? Why you got to do this? And I say, okay, hold on a minute. So you know how to do banking, you know how to do savings, do you? Yeah, I've got a savings account. So who's taught you how to do your banking? My mum. Who taught your mum how to do their banking? Well, their mum, my grandma. That's what I didn't have. I didn't have a grandmother that taught my mother, that taught me. So that's where we have the breakdown of the teaching. And that's the same with the culture. The elders weren't there to pass that culture on, so we've lost that culture as well. So, yeah.
Opportunity for more questions. Owen.
Thanks for the talk. I'm just really curious about what you said about income management and how if we had a broader coalition against income management when it was first introduced in the Northern Territory. I just wanted to ask, what would that look like for you? Because I think that's a really central question. How are we going to what does that activism and that resistance look like? Or is that too broad?
I just think it's like what Tanya said, that we all need to come together, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all bleed blood, red, and we all whatever. So we as individuals and human beings, we all need to come together, because at the end of the day, someone in our family is going to be affected by this basic cut, bottom line. And like I saw it happening in Centrelink, we as Aboriginal people and as an Aboriginal community are the guinea pigs. Doesn't matter what the government want to push, we and our community will always have it chucked on us first. So just keep an eye out on new things that are happening in our community that may happen in yours.
Also, with regards to activism and what does it look like, can you just go into that a little bit more?
Well, I suppose I just, because we talk a lot about how we propose things, but I think how we're going to effectively oppose it is the question. Like, do we, for example, have rallies in the street and say we don't want that? But the problem with rallies in the street, you go home and they do it anyway. You know, how do we say no and make them actually not do it? You know,
I think the thing is that we need unity. That is the bottom line. I mean, Tony Abbott, I keep saying it, Tony Abbott gave us that in the form of hatred towards him and his policies and what he was doing to the people of this country across the board. Me personally, what do I think needs to happen for us to be heard as advocates and caring citizens? I think we all need to unite, and my thoughts are right up at this point in time, are right up with Guy Fawkes. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. Well, in West Australia, every year we celebrate Guy Fawkes Day, and personally, I think that's the way to go. I think that the Australian people have had enough, and I think people want action now. They're not happy with just having a rally, a march, a conference, because to me now, I actually see it as another form of business, like Job Network. It's just another money-making venture. What we need to do is create change within ourselves and our communities. We need to go out as a united people and create the change that we want. Go to Parliament. You know, personally, I think we should be firing a lot of them. They work for us, not us working for them. I don't see why we should be accepting them, telling us what's going on. We should be telling them. That's what I think.
I suppose another way that we could look at it, what we've done with our campaigns is we've found email addresses and telephone numbers, and we've just put it out and said, ring the mob. Email, this is their email them, flood their emails and flood the phone. So that's another way that, you know, get people getting involved.
Sarah down the back.
Yeah, I remember hearing recently a quote from Hugh Jackman who came out because of the SOS movement and said that he'd actually spent time in the Aboriginal community, and that was really eye-opening to him. And he brought up the fact that there is so little education, you know, for white Australians growing up. How do you see a way in there to, I suppose, because I know very little about Aboriginal culture apart from, you know, the bit that I looked into since SOS left Australia, and I want to know more. I want to be a better ally, and I want to be able to speak on your behalf, you know, when I'm out doing activism. But I think I'm nervous as a white person to, yeah, I'm aware of my privilege, and I don't want to speak out of turn or feel like you said, like we know better for your communities than what you know for yourselves.
Well, the first thing that people need to realise is within the Aboriginal communities we have our own protocols and ways of doing things. So as a white fella, your best and safest bet is just to follow our lead and support us from behind, so to speak, and never speak for an Aboriginal, and that's said respectfully. And I think really, come up, if you see a black fella, go up to them, talk to them, connect, chat, you know. The other day, they had globally a movement for people to spend time together, contact, looking at each other, human contact. You know, not sitting on social media somewhere in a little back room in your bedroom, or, you know, that's not really connecting and creating change, really. The best way is to go to a community. Let them know ahead of time that you'd like to come, number one. You know, give them a couple of weeks' notice, can we come pop in? And you know what, I can guarantee you those communities would love to have you sit with them, yarn with them, ask whatever the questions you want to ask. That's all I can say, that is the best way.
Other ways, you've got the internet, but don't believe everything you read on the internet. But you do have the places like Ghana Cultural Centre down at Warraparinga. So, you know, you could pop in and just read some of the history there about the Ghana history, about Ghana culture. Educate yourself a bit, but the best way to learn is actually talk to an Aboriginal person. Yeah. And, you know, with all the social media and stuff, that, you know, they might be actually happy that someone's actually taken the time out to get off their phone or their Facebook and actually sit down and have a yarn with them.
There's a community in West Australia currently that is calling out, pleading, begging for support. I've let them know that SA Anti-Poverty Network is on the go there with support. This community is outraged because the government, besides Sajuna in West Australia, they want to also put them onto this cashless card, and they are outraged. Because you know, in a lot of these communities, when they go to the shops to do their shopping, the prices are marked so high that what we get for $100 is not what they get for $100. So don't be fooled to think that there's not little systems there either where people will sell their card for a lot less than what it's actually valued at. And who do you reckon they're going to be selling the card to? Where do you reckon the card's going to end up? It's going to end up in that shopkeeper's hands. So we need to let all these little communities know that we support them and we recognise their struggle as well, and they're not wanting to be included with this basics card and cashless card.
I think we have time for one last question. Sure.
I don't really know too much about what I'm going to say, except that I found out in the last 48 hours that apparently Iceland government is run by the community. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I need to go on and explore that more, but isn't that some of what we're talking about in the last 2 days? If the pollies aren't working for us, would we start to go down the path of saying what we want? So you know more about that?
Well, I know that's happened. Iceland did that. It's been about a year now, I'd say, roughly, yeah. And they also, that was with the banking as well. And I think that's a great idea, and that's really what we should do. Being Aboriginal and talking about Aboriginal and how it connects with that, I think that's exactly what we need to do as in Aboriginal communities. We need, as in SOS Black Australia at the moment, they're trying to have a fundraising site, and they also have another website that you can join up if you have skills, like building skills or, say, solar panel installation, etc. Because what we're trying to do, and our next rally on the 27th will be, is trying to raise funds so that these communities can become self-sufficient. We can install solar panels, put their own pumps and tanks, etc., into these communities, make them self-sufficient so that the government cannot just come in at any time. And you know, this goes for all of us too, as far as our living. We need to start thinking survival way, as in solar panels, water, etc., so that when the day comes that chance can happen to any of us, you know.
27th of the what?
Of November.
I just want to go back and say, I love what you asked, but I don't want that just to be extended to you. I would like everybody here to go home, do a bit of research on Aboriginal people, have a look at, you know, the struggles that we've had over the last so many years, and yeah, you know, it's getting weary for me because, you know, I'm hitting 50 now and I'm still talking about stuff that my sister was talking about when, you know, she was a young girl and the struggles as Aboriginal people. So I hope my daughters aren't here, you know, talking, but I can see one of my daughters will be, because she's a lot like me. But yeah, just, you know, ask at your local school if you've got kids at your school, you know, if they're flying the Aboriginal flag or things, you know, or, if, you know, just ask them, you know, have you got Aboriginal stuff that, you know, culture that you can display in your front office and things like that. Just get local areas to start thinking about Aboriginal people as well. Do your little bit in your little corner of the world.
You can always have a coffee morning and invite to find out if there are any local fellas in your area. You know?
But there's a, oh sorry.
I myself do a Facebook page, and it's called Deadly Yarning, because that's something us black fellas do, we just like to yarn all the time. So Deadly Yarning in South Australian Aboriginal communities. So in that page, I post a lot of Aboriginal events that are happening within South Australia. So a lot of the good news stories, traineeships or employment, anything that is a positive for our community, I post in there. So you're quite welcome to come in, have a look at the page, put me a little email, and yeah, I can, you know, point you in ways and directions for information in the Aboriginal community.
Yeah, that's all that we have time for this session at the moment. So I think our speakers deserve a big round.